Welcome to the Imagine AI Live podcast. I'm your host, Chêrénique, and we are here in New York City at the First Impact event. I have today with me one of the speakers who is going to be a guest today. Hello and welcome.
Hi, my name is Amanda Molina. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. So can you tell the audience a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So currently I work for Microsoft as an artificial intelligence attorney in their cloud and AI division. I also I'm in the Reserve Corps for the Air Force, essentially a JAG military member in the Air Force Reserves. And prior to coming over to Microsoft a couple years ago, I worked for a few years in the U.S. House of Representatives in a nonpartisan role, working as Legislative Counsel. So aside from all that, in my spare time,
Right, because you have so much.
I also serve on the boards of several nonprofits and help a little bit, not only in the general mission, but one's more community focused. The other one is UN focused with the United Nations. And with those, I try to, as best I can, not only dispel misinformation surrounding AI, but also provide just educational and use case ideas for people in different spaces and be a bridge between the public and private sector.
And what led you to want to do those things and to teach about AI?
I love that question. Well, from a personal perspective, I come from a very, not just unique background with this mixture of public and private sector, but I also come from a low-income minority background. And I grew up in a home where, when the housing crisis happened back in 2008, my family was not only homeless, but was on welfare for several years. So when we think about the AI systems, and especially when it comes to ethical AI, which focuses a lot on bias, when we think about how those are implemented, it's oftentimes not necessarily an insidious means to try to harm people.
Yeah.
But oftentimes it's just something that our engineers, our product managers, just people are not necessarily thinking about. And so aside from a lack of diversity in the space in general, I also felt like my personal background really could help influence the space and show a different perspective and light on not just the AI ethical implications, but also the future use cases in a positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. And how did you get introduced to the Imagine AI Live community here?
Oh, that's also a great question. So one of your co-founders, or for the particular New York one, Liz, she is a member of the American Society for Artificial Intelligence, which I joined recently. And I met her and was talking a little bit about my viewpoints and my perspective, not just on ethics, but all different use cases and things that I'm very passionate about. In the cybersecurity space, I also, with the military, focus a lot on national security. My academic background is focused on national security and foreign policy. So in the sense of where quantum computing can lead, I was really concerned and discussed my concerns with the dangers, but also the positive use cases of quantum computing.
Yeah. So building on that, what do you think are the most transformative use cases for artificial intelligence?
So quantum computing definitely is one of them, the transformative use cases. Like the industry in general, I mean, AI has been around since the 1950s, and I don't think, or at least I hope, Alan Turing didn't necessarily imagine what quantum computing could do, but I think he'd be proud of where it's at today. But quantum computing is, I don't know how much you know about it, it's a little bit different from our typical traditional computing. It operates on qubits. So at a subatomic level, you can be in multiple spaces at once. So where traditional computing is deterministic, you use zeros and ones. So, the algorithms always typically come up with the same or, similar answer. In the probabilistic space of quantum computing, you can come up with probabilities, essentially. And so you have different answers for the same question. So in that sense, quantum computing is still very new because we're still just kind of building these computers. The actual cost of building a quantum computer makes the disparities between who's going to have this technology and not also very large. And as well as the operational requirements surrounding quantum computing are also a difficulty in that industry. So it will be transformative in the sense of how it will be able to engage in cryptography, for example, especially decrypting and encrypting passwords, its ability to come up with vaccines, for example, that has a lot of healthcare implications. I know one of the scenarios that one of our physicists gave me was, if a NASA scientist asks a quantum computer, it's not like a traditional computer, so it's not a prompt, but if you ask a quantum computer, what metal alloy can withstand a certain amount of heat near the sun, A quantum computer will come up with different answers for that particular type. So there's all these like positive use cases, but all these dangers with any technology that we have to consider.
Yeah.
So I think about that as a transformative use case. I also think about nanotechnology and wearable devices, in particular with respect to just the everyday employee. A lot of productivity technology focuses a little bit on a little bit of privacy violations, in the sense that, you know, this particular one I'm referring to can actually analyze your brain activity and tell how focused you are in particular times.
Yeah.
So with that type of technology, my concerns are not just around privacy for employees, but also where is the limit? What are the guardrails that we need to put in place? And how should business leaders, policy leaders be thinking about how this, not only this technology will transform how we live, but also how it will transform how we work, how we do things. And that's why, as far as transformative technology is concerned, all those questions should constantly be, I think, at the top of mind for everyone.
Absolutely. And you've mentioned a few times the wonderful things that can come about, but how you've been concerned about the potential negative effects. How do you think we can mitigate the potential negative implications of this technology?
Yeah, so from a business perspective, I think that we can mitigate it by, as business leaders, thinking about things from the top down. So implementing ethical frameworks into our already existing structures is typically the best way to approach it. Mm-hmm. A lot of businesses, especially big tech, you know, I work at Microsoft, not speaking on behalf of Microsoft, but a lot of big tech companies have data governance boards, they have ethical committees. Mm-hmm. So implementing within your existing structures, resources like that. And it is resource intensive, which I do recognize. Mm-hmm. But it's also just thinking about diversity and inclusion in your workforce, making sure that you have people from all different walks of life and all different backgrounds, which also can be a little bit difficult depending on how we're skilling employees. And that's where government personnel comes in mind as well. We can effectuate more positive change by ensuring that even with job displacement, for example, which is a big fear surrounding AI, mm-hmm. the policies that should be in place should focus on upskilling workers with respect to AI, because it will also create a ton of new jobs. Yep. So as far as the diversity and inclusion aspect is concerned, by joining with other stakeholders, policy leaders, business leaders, we can ensure that different voices are helping bridge that gap in that space.
How do you think you can get those people interested in the topic and to join the conversation?
So I actually, and it's still new, I'm just building this out with my partner, but I started a blog to try to dispel misinformation, help also just inspire people to get more involved, more informed on AI and what it is, by starting a blog called the sidebars.com.
Nice.
So I also I'm trying to publish in academia. I am a guest lecturer at Georgetown Continuing Education School mm-hmm. as well, in their intelligence courses. Obviously talking about AI, but so part of the things I do is educate, is one of my first answers. I try to educate people, let them know about something that I'm passionate about, and how this is not only going to make our lives better, and there's fears surrounding it, but it will transform the way we do so many different things, how decisions are made in finances, in healthcare, in manufacturing. All different industries are being affected.
Mm-hmm. So we've talked about a lot of high-level AI implications. We've talked about quantum computing, these big things. But I'm curious how you use AI on a day-to-day basis, whether it's at work or in personal projects that you have.
Absolutely. So on a day-to-day basis, I think that AI tools in general, co-pilots, ChatGPT, these large language models-based systems, all of them are really helpful as tools to give you a framework for mindset of thinking. If I'm like, what are generally different places that I can travel to that allow me to be at the beach, but also have mountainous region, in the everyday, like personal questions, or as well as just healthcare. Like if I have, this symptom and this symptom, what is likely something that I should ask my doctor about? What are different places that I can go to engage more in artificial intelligence? Which models are best to help address biases within the systems themselves. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes that'll give you a starting place, and then we expound off of it.
Yeah. So it's clear you're educated with all of your background that you've had and the different jobs and positions that you've had. What do you think, or what could you say to students who are maybe just starting out at university or considering university, and how they can implement the technology into their studies?
Absolutely. So before I jump into that question, top of mind for me, I say, is we are at a crossroads with AI, not just with quantum that I mentioned earlier, but just a crossroads in general. Anytime you have a transformative, disruptive technology like this, we have the capacity to benefit all of humanity and help build a future that empowers all of us.
Yes.
So before I jump into where students are, which again, I love the passion that students have, I will say that the future is in all of our hands, and we have the ability to really effectuate change, positive change that benefits all.
Yeah.
So when it comes to what students can do, I think it's really understanding where trends are. Oftentimes, business leaders, policymakers, they think about where's the technology today? What are our capabilities, and how can we make them better with our bottom line, or how can we make them better with where harms are being done explicitly? But thinking about things in 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I oftentimes, my friends will see me just like staring off in the distance, will imagine, they're like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm thinking about drones being used as autonomous vehicles to transport people. And then one of my friends that's working actually at Honeywell mentioned to me, she's like, actually, they're doing that in Dubai. There's different systems that are already being tested publicly in Dubai or different places. So even in those spaces, I think that thinking about, okay, well, that's already being done, I had no idea, is really fascinating. But if that's being done, in Dubai, that's likely going to be done here in the next 10 years. So what would that look like? What are these trends that we're likely to see?
Wow, fascinating. So what about those in the workforce and AI is coming along and they're not familiar? What advice would you give to them?
I'm going to go back to the get informed idea piece to it, because again, my mom, for example, she does not like technology, ironically. So that's why I'm always trying to push it on her. She's just like, I'm not, wasn't in that era. I'm part of that space where we didn't have smartphones. We didn't have internet really. Having a desktop computer when I was a kid was a huge deal. And that feeling of awe that you get when you're like, oh my gosh, when you use ChatGPT for the first time, when you had a smartphone for the first time, even when I used the internet for I remember the feeling of searching, and I loved the library, believe it or not.
No, me too. I get it.
Yeah. And I remember being like, I could search anything. And it's sort of like having a book, which, in a young mind, I didn't necessarily know. But having knowledge at your fingertips is such an incredible just opportunity. I know I'm kind of harping on this, but effectuate change for our own lives. How can I make this not only what the people around me are doing and thinking about where industries are going, but how can I make this easier to find a recipe? How can I make it easier, like I mentioned earlier, to just do a quick search on what are the best places to eat ramen noodle soup in a particular city or something along those lines.
Yeah, if you try to Google that, good luck.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, the systems are biased. I mean, maybe some. I don't know where the ramen noodle soup category is, how they're embedded in the system, but yeah, those types of things. I think just thinking about informed and how the technology can just effectuate different aspects of where we are. And I think in healthcare, we're seeing a lot more strides in that space, and that affects everybody. Yeah. Healthcare especially.
Yeah. So we've touched on it a little bit, but I want to ask a little more directly, what are your hopes for the future of AI and other technology that it will enhance?
Yeah, I think my hopes for the future are dependent on people realizing that, like any tool, AI should have some kind of guardrails and systems in place for safety. When we created, pills, we have to test that with humans, make sure. So my hope is that it's human-centric. When you couple AI with robotics, with drone technology, with lethal autonomous systems, the capabilities are enormous. Yes. And lethal autonomous systems is another one that I can go into on human in the loop, human on the loop, the implications of that. But we want to make sure, especially in the warfare space, that people are thinking about these in a very ethical way and approaching it in a way that benefits all of humanity.
Yeah.
So my future is that it benefits people. I mean, and also the affordability. I mean, you see large disparities. I had mentioned job displacement earlier. It's not just job displacement. I think the access, like I mentioned with quantum, you have these large technology companies, government agencies that are working on these quantum computers. And then you also have like small startups that are also getting access. So what happens to people who don't have these? How are they going to be protected? How are they going to keep their passwords protected? There's a lot more reliance on these big companies to ensure that the safety and cybersecurity is in place. And so there's a lot of responsibility on these companies as well. But I also think it's important for people to understand what is actually happening to their data and being informed from a privacy perspective. Is that it's also on people to make sure that they're understanding if someone's telling you that the data can be used in this particular way and you're not comfortable with that, or as I say, it's the creepy factor. If you're like, that's a little bit creepy that you're, putting together all of my public information and then coming up all of my social media information and then putting together a profile and then advertising to me who I should vote for and advertising certain information and then excluding others.
Yeah.
And then where I fear, again, is sometimes that advertisement information can be, as we saw with Cambridge Analytica, just access to millions and millions of users' data. Ensuring that there's more security and safety and information on that. That's the kind of where I see it. Is this being a tool that augments people and as a second brain and allows us to focus more on creative tasks rather than the monotonous tasks of checking our emails. Or, letting the hotel...
That has come up a lot today.
Yeah. Or letting the hotel know that, that your flight was delayed or your train was delayed and you're going to be a little bit late. AI systems, in a very short time, will be able to do that automatically and maybe just suggest to you that, hey, I noticed that you got an email saying your flight was delayed or a text message. Do you want to contact your reservation at the hotel tomorrow or today?
Yeah.
Scenarios like that where it augments our lives and makes it better.
Yeah. Well, you definitely have a broad range of topics that you're well versed in, so the blog is going to be very interesting. I know I'll be checking it out for sure. But I'd like to end with one final question.
Yes.
If there is somebody watching right now that is considering coming to the next Imagine AI live event, what would you say to them?
I would say, come. No, I would say that this is a great opportunity to be a part of something that's intersectional, interdisciplinary. Out of all of the conferences I've been to, a lot of them are focused on very specific industries, but AI touches nearly every industry. So being in a place where you're able to hear from different leaders in very different walks of life in all different industries, it gives you a perspective that is more collaborative and will help you understand that those stakeholder models. I mean, we have academics, we have students, we have scholars, we have ethicists, philosophers, business leaders, CEOs, attorneys like myself. So just taking all that into consideration, having that knowledge will give you just a broad sense of where the technology is at and exactly all the things that I said where we should become more informed on. That'll help inform you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking today and for being here at the event and speaking and all the expertise that you've shared. We really appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Yeah.